I was drying my hands in the men's room when I heard her laugh. Not just any laugh. That laugh. The one she only uses when she wants something. The smooth, twinkling kind she used on waiters for free desserts or cops to avoid tickets. But this time it wasn't aimed at me. It hadn't been in a long, long time. That laugh shot through me like a staple gun to the chest. I stepped back out into the hall, careful not to be seen, and peered into the ballroom. The chandeliers overhead glinted like they were trying to warn me. The music played soft, some vintage waltz that didn't match the electricity crawling under my skin. I saw her, center floor, one hand clutching a flute of champagne, the other resting far too comfortably on the lapel of a man I didn't recognize. Not a coworker, not a friend, not just some guy. He had the posture of someone who thought he already owned what he hadn't even asked for. Now let me be clear, I didn't want to come to this stupid ball. I didn't even know it was happening until 48 hours prior, when I saw the RSVP email open on her laptop. She claimed it was just a formality, a last-minute work thing. But she hadn't mentioned it to me once. And I wasn't even invited. Not officially. That's why I showed up unannounced. That's why I rented a tux from a place that still used fax machines and made me leave a $250 deposit. That's why I hadn't eaten all day, just pacing my apartment, heart pounding, checking the clock every 10 minutes like some underpaid spy with a broken compass. And now here I was, standing in the shadow of velvet curtains, watching my wife flirt like she forgot who had paid for her designer heels. I didn't storm in. That's not me. I'm not a fighter. I'm not even a talker, really. I'm Ellis Carrick, 39, husband of one, owner of 2 slow-leaking tires, survivor of countless Sunday brunches with people who call sparkling water hydration. And I'm not proud to say this, but I've been a doormat most of my life. But tonight, something felt different. I picked up the nearest thing I could find on the waiter's tray beside me, a silver bucket of partially melted ice. Cold, heavy, dripping just enough to leave a trail. And I walked toward them. The guy, tall, smug, very sure of himself, noticed me first. His smile didn't even fade. If anything, he looked amused, like I was just a minor inconvenience. Like he was 2 moves away from checkmate, and I had brought a water pistol to a chess match. Talia, my wife, turned just as I approached. She blinked. Her smile froze. Then, she said it. One word. One syllable. Soaked in entitlement. Seriously? No apology. No panic. Not even guilt. Just pure annoyance. That's when I knew I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. She wasn't hiding it. Because she didn't think she had to. So I did something very un-Ellis. I calmly tipped the ice bucket, letting the slush and water slide directly onto my own shoes, and part of hers. She shrieked. Not dramatically. Not even loudly. Just sharp and disgusted. Like I had spit in her wine. Are you insane? She snapped, stepping back from the puddle. Her champagne spilled onto the floor, right next to my pride. I looked at her, dead in the eyes, and said quietly, so only she could hear, I'm wide awake now, sweetheart. Then I turned to the man and added, enjoy your dance. She's expensive. And I walked away. I didn't go home. I didn't check my phone. I didn't even cry. I sat in the parking lot with the engine running and the radio off. Hands shaking, brain spiraling. And it was in that moment, that frozen, numb moment, that I decided. I wasn't going to leave quietly. No more late-night apologies I didn't know. No more pretending I didn't notice her second phone. No more watching her slip away while smiling at someone else. I was going to change everything. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, elbows on my knees, staring at the silent wall like it might suddenly cough up the truth I didn't want to face. She hadn't come home yet. Midnight passed. Then 1 o'clock. Then 3:17 a.m. That was the exact time I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and opened the drawer we always pretended we didn't have, the junk drawer. Among old batteries, expired coupons, and broken pens, there was a key I hadn't touched in months. The key to her studio downtown. Talia called it her creative space. Said it helped her focus. Said she used it for freelance design gigs, for vision boarding, for cleansing her energy. I'd never been inside. Never even been invited. But tonight I stopped asking for permission. The building was mostly dark when I pulled up, except for the streetlight flickering like it hadn't decided if it wanted to live or die. I parked in the back and used the elevator. Her unit was 4D. I stood in front of the door for almost a full minute before unlocking it. When I stepped in, I expected art. Maybe mood boards, sketches, color palettes on the walls. What I found instead were wine glasses in pairs. A fleece throw on the couch that still held the shape of two bodies. A Bluetooth speaker blinking blue. And a faint, unmistakable smell. Cologne. Not mine. I didn't move for a while. I just stood there with the key still in my hand, the door wide open behind me, letting the cold October air swirl around my ankles like a ghost. This was real. No more denial. No more mental gymnastics. She wasn't slipping away from me. She had already jumped. I finally walked inside and closed the door behind me. Then I did what no one wants to admit they've done. I started digging. I opened drawers, scanned shelves, checked under couch cushions like I was looking for loose change. But what I was really searching for was confirmation. Evidence. A sign that I wasn't insane. It didn't take long. There was a laptop on the desk. I knew the password. She thought she was clever, using the name of the bar we had our first date at, Trillions, but she forgot she once texted me the name when she couldn't remember how to spell it herself. I typed it in. It worked. There were folders. Most were standard. Projects. Invoices. Mood boards. Then there was one called J. Just a single letter. Inside, screenshots. Flight receipts. Photo attachments. Audio messages. Google Calendar entries labeled as consultations that happened to align perfectly with nights she came home, exhausted from networking. And then, God help me, a video. Nothing explicit. No, that would have almost made it easier. Instead, it was a video of her sitting on this exact couch, legs tucked under her, smiling at someone off camera. She was talking about her dreams, about designing her forever home, about wanting to wake up next to someone who made her feel alive. She looked free, and I've never seen her like that around me. That's the thing about betrayal. It's not just the infidelity. It's the replacement. It's realizing someone has taken your place in conversations, in thoughts, in private laughter. Someone else had seen the version of her I hadn't seen in years, or maybe never saw at all. And worse, she gave it to him. Willingly, like it was never mine to begin with. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. I didn't take anything. Didn't copy the files. Didn't forward myself the screenshots. I didn't have to. They were burned into my skull now, seared into my chest. I locked the place behind me, drove home, and sat in my car for 46 minutes before finally walking back into our house. She was asleep, or pretending to be. I stood at the bedroom door just long enough to hear her fake breathing rhythm, then turned and went to the guest room. The one with the squeaky air mattress and the busted lamp and the dusty copy of Atomic Habits I never read. I lay there all night, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Not just the night of the ball, not just the J folder, but every conversation she cut short. Every time she looked at her phone and smiled. Every Saturday errand run that lasted 4 hours. Every stupid time I chose to trust her because that's what good husbands are supposed to do. But not anymore. Tomorrow, I would start my plan. Not for revenge. Not yet. First, I needed more. Not to confront her, but to corner her. Because when she finally realized I knew everything, I wanted her to feel exactly what I felt now. Powerless. The next morning, I made her coffee. Not out of kindness. Not because I'd forgiven her. But because I wanted to watch her. I needed to see how she lied. What facial muscles moved when she stretched the truth. Whether she blinked too often or not enough. I wanted to study her like a machine I didn't trust anymore. She padded into the kitchen wearing the oversized gray sweater she always claimed was mine, even though I hadn't worn it in over 5 years. Her hair was still up from the night before. Her makeup was smudged. She looked beautiful in that careless, accidental way that used to disarm me. I slid the mug toward her. Black, no sugar, just how she liked it. She smiled. That smile used to be home. Now it felt like a lock I no longer had the key for. Thanks, she said. You're up early. I shrugged. Couldn't sleep. She didn't ask why. Didn't even pretend to. The rest of that Sunday passed like a funeral where no one knew the deceased. We floated around the house like ghosts who'd forgotten how to touch each other. She folded laundry while watching some garbage true crime doc on Netflix. I raked leaves I didn't care about, just to stay outside. But under all that silence, I was working, plotting, scheming. I spent the entire afternoon reactivating old accounts. One was a spare email I made during college to get double coupons on some app. Another was a dummy PayPal I used once during the pandemic to sell a used graphics card. I was laying the groundwork for what I needed next. Eyes. Not metaphorical ones. Real surveillance. I wasn't going to confront her yet. That would be giving her control. No, I wanted to own the narrative. So I did what any betrayed, tech-savvy man with insomnia and too much time would do. I bought gear. By Monday morning, I had overnight 3 discrete mini cameras from a site I probably shouldn't have trusted, but did anyway. 2 were disguised as USB chargers. The third looked like an air freshener. I also bought a $49 mic recorder that could stick under a car seat and last up to 14 days. I told myself it was insane. Paranoid. Possibly illegal. But every time I hesitated, I remembered that damn folder. The video. Her voice describing a future I was never in. I wasn't the paranoid one. I was the fool who stayed quiet too long. I planted the first cam in her studio that Tuesday. She left for her weekly therapy session, the one she claimed helped her process burnout. I had exactly 90 minutes. She didn't know I'd copied her building access card months ago when she left her purse open in the kitchen. I told myself I'd never use it, that I'd only taken a photo just in case. Apparently, today was in case. The studio was still exactly how I left it. Clean, impersonal, lived in by someone who lived 2 lives. I found a socket near the bookshelf, plugged in the charger cam, then wiped everything I touched. Back home, I synced the feed to my burner laptop. The screen blinked once, then showed her couch, coffee table, and most importantly, the space where she always sat when she worked. Perfect. But here's where things got strange. For the next 3 days, nothing happened. She went in. She sat. She worked. She answered calls. I recorded everything. I watched the live feed like it was a religion. Every beep from my laptop had me checking timestamps like a dog chasing shadows. But she didn't meet anyone. Didn't flirt. Didn't lie. She was boring. Mundane. So normal it almost made me feel crazy. But I knew better. Talia wasn't sloppy. She was deliberate. If she was cheating, and I knew she was, she wouldn't let it happen in a place that could be traced. No, the studio wasn't her secret. It was her decoy, and I had just confirmed it. So I turned my attention to her car. That Friday morning, while she showered, I slipped outside in my robe and stuck the recorder underneath her passenger seat, right above the carpet where it would never be seen. That device, tiny, black, dumb as a rock, turned out to be my best friend. Because by Sunday night, I had 8 hours of audio to scrub through. And buried in those hours, mostly engine noise, bad pop songs, and her occasional phone calls, was something I will never forget. It happened on hour 6, minute 21. She was driving. Wind noise. Turn signal. Then a voice. A man's voice. Deep. Familiar. Confident. "You want to talk about last night?" he said, chuckling. She laughed. It wasn't her fake laugh. It was that laugh again, the one I heard at the ball. "Not in the car," she whispered. "Not yet." The audio clicked, then silence. I replayed it 12 times. It didn't matter who he was. Not yet. All that mattered was that he existed. The next morning, I checked her calendar. She had a client dinner scheduled for 7:30 p.m. at a place called Amara's, one of those overpriced farm-to-table joints where the appetizers cost more than my weekly gas bill. I didn't ask to join her. Didn't even mention it. But I did make a reservation for 7:15 p.m. Table for 1. Corner booth. Facing the bar. And just far enough away to see what she looked like when she thought no one was watching. I arrived early. Too early. Amara's was one of those minimalist restaurants that looked like a furniture showroom had married a jazz club. White plates, black napkins, low ceilings, and ambient lighting that made everyone look like they belonged in a cologne commercial. I sat down at my booth, alone, with a knot in my stomach the size of a grapefruit that hadn't moved since sunrise. The hostess smiled at me with the same polite distance that Talia had shown me for months. Maybe it was contagious. I didn't order food. Just a single glass of water. I wanted clarity, not comfort. From where I sat, I had a perfect line of sight to the front entrance, the bar, and about half the restaurant. I told myself I didn't expect much. Maybe a handshake. A weirdly long hug. A suggestive glance. I wasn't sure. But what I wasn't prepared for, what shattered whatever was left of my denial, was how casual she looked when she walked in. Not guilty. Not nervous. Just radiant. She wore a soft cream blouse tucked into dark jeans, hair pulled back in a way that exposed the freckle behind her ear. The one I used to kiss when she'd fall asleep during storms. She was smiling before she even saw him. That told me everything. He arrived 90 seconds later. The same guy from the ball. Square jaw. Navy blazer. Confident like he'd been playing this game far too long and hadn't lost in years. They didn't touch when they greeted each other. Not in the obvious way, but their eyes locked a little too long. Their smiles were synchronized. She placed her purse on the floor like she was planning to stay a while. He pulled out her chair. She laughed at something he whispered before they even opened the menus. And just like that, they were gone. I mean, not physically. They were still sitting across the room. But emotionally, she had left the building. Left me. I sipped my water. Slowly, hands clenched under the table. I kept reminding myself I wasn't here to cause a scene. This wasn't a confrontation. This was documentation. A mental recording I could replay when she inevitably tried to spin the story her way. For the first 15 minutes, they just talked. And I watched. I noticed everything. She leaned forward when he spoke. Brushed imaginary lint off her sleeve when he complimented her. Tucked her hair back when he teased her about something. She touched her lips with her fingers, not once, but twice, like they were already warm with anticipation. She never touched her lips around me anymore. When the appetizers arrived, he fed her a bite. She let him. She didn't even look around first. That part hurt more than it should have. She was so confident, so bold, so unbothered by the risk of being seen, that she didn't even scan the room like most people do when they're doing something they know they shouldn't. She wasn't scared of being caught, because she believed I was too blind to ever notice. I sat there for 45 minutes, long enough to watch her lower her voice across the table and cover her mouth while whispering, long enough to see his hand graze her thigh under the linen, long enough to hate myself for sitting still. But I didn't move. I didn't interrupt. I didn't blow up the night. No, I just paid for my untouched water, tipped the server more than I should have, and slipped out the side entrance like a shadow that never belonged in the light to begin with. Back in the car, I could feel my heart pounding like it wanted to crawl out of my throat. I had parked far enough to see the valet stand. I watched as they walked out, laughing again. She said something that made him stop and grab her hand, mid-step. She didn't pull away. She just stared at him. And he kissed her. It wasn't wild. It wasn't messy. It wasn't even long. But it was real. It was effortless. And it was the kind of kiss people share when they think they're starting something, not ending it. That's when I took the photo. One single photo. Blurry, poorly lit, caught through the windshield, but unmistakable. Her. Him. Locked in a moment. By the time I got home, she had already texted me. Dinner ran late. Got drinks with a client. Hope you ate. I stared at that message for a full minute. Then I typed. Yep. Water was great. I waited. No reply. I didn't expect one. I didn't sleep again that night. But this time it wasn't grief keeping me awake. It was calculation. Because now the evidence was real. I wasn't guessing anymore. I had timestamps. Audio. Photos. All I needed now was leverage. Because when you're married to someone who lies that effortlessly, you can't just walk away and hope karma does its job. No, you have to engineer karma yourself. There's something that happens in your brain after betrayal, something primitive and slippery. You stop thinking like a husband and start thinking like a spy. You stop asking why and start asking how. And me? I had finally crossed that threshold. No more pacing. No more questioning. I had what I needed. The video. The audio. The photo. The lie. Now, I needed her to show me the truth, in her own words, with her own voice, without knowing I was the one holding the microphone. So I made a plan. Monday morning, she left for work like nothing had happened. Same routine. Same distracted peck on the cheek. Same offhand comment about late meetings. But she didn't notice what was different, what I'd carefully planted while she was asleep the night before. Under her passenger seat, I had replaced the recorder with a new one, this time synced via Bluetooth to my burner phone. And beneath the dashboard, inside the frame where the glove box met the center console, I had taped a tiny tracker. Not for GPS. I already knew where she went. This one was a vibration sensor. It would ping me anytime someone got into the car with her. A literal alert. You're not alone anymore. It was ridiculous. Paranoid. Possibly insane. But necessary. Because she was playing chess with fire. And I was finally playing back. That afternoon, I ran into Jem. Now, you don't know Jem, and neither does Talia, and that was exactly the point. Jem and I went to undergrad together. We weren't best friends, but we shared a brutal algorithms class and a few hundred cigarettes on the dorm roof during midterms. After graduation, he'd gone into UI/UX design and stayed in the city. I hadn't seen him in years, not since he started dating a woman who worked in Talia's industry. Not her firm, but close enough. We grabbed coffee. I waited until we were halfway through our drinks before I asked, "Hey, random question. You know anyone at Markham plus Sloan?" He raised an eyebrow. Yeah? Why?" I gave a careful shrug. "Talia's firm. Just wondering." He tilted his head. "Why? She okay?" "Honestly, I don't know." That's all I had to say. 3 hours later, I had an email from Jim. Subject, "Is this him?" One attachment. I clicked. It was a LinkedIn profile. Jonas Kepler, creative director. Markham plus Sloan. 9 years in the industry. Former speaker at some design conference I pretended to remember. Same face. Same man from the ball. From the restaurant. Except now he had a name. The next morning, I made my move. I created a fake email account using a domain that sounded real enough. Kressler Design Group at Outlook. Calm. Then I wrote the bait. Subject, freelance partnership inquiry. "Hi Talia. We're looking for a contract designer to support an upcoming residential project. Your name came highly recommended. Are you open to a brief consultation this week? Let me know what works for your schedule. Anya Kressler, creative consultant, KDG. No logo. No signature. No link. Simple. Direct. Believable. And most importantly, ambiguous. Was it a real client? A new opportunity? Or a test?" I sent it at 9:03 a.m. She replied by 10:17. "Absolutely. Thursday or Friday afternoon works. Let me know the details." Gotcha. That night, I casually asked what her week looked like. She said Thursday was tight, but Friday she had a possible consult. Her eyes flicked up for half a second when she said it. That flick was confirmation. She bought it. I scheduled the meeting for Friday at 4:30 p.m. The address I gave her? A co-working space I used to rent a desk in 2 years ago. Still had the access code. Still had the lobby key. I booked one of the conference rooms under the fake company name. Then I set up a camera behind the smoke glass bookshelf. Wired to my phone. Streaming directly to me. She wouldn't be meeting a client. She'd be meeting herself. Or at least, the version of herself that believed she was clever enough to juggle 2 lives. And what I'd learn in that room would change everything. But before Friday came, Wednesday hit me like a truck. I had just come home from a fake grocery run. Sometimes I drove around for an hour just to scream into the steering wheel. I was walking through the front door when my phone vibrated twice. The tracker. Passenger seat vibration. 2 pings. She wasn't alone. I froze in the hallway. Then the second alert came in. Car stopped. Parked. Unnamed location. 1 mile. I grabbed my keys, slipped back out the door, and drove with my heart in my throat. I found the car in a small, shaded corner lot behind an old bookstore. A place we used to love back when people still read paperbacks. A place that, ironically, was known for being private and quiet. It took me a few minutes to spot them. Through a crack in the wooden fence. They were sitting on a bench behind the building. She was holding his jacket. He was leaning close. She was smiling. But it wasn't the kiss that destroyed me. It was what she said before it happened. I heard it through the mic, barely audible, but there. "I don't think he suspects anything. He's tired all the time lately. Distant. He barely notices me anymore." The words slid through me like frost. That was it. That was the moment. I stopped feeling like a husband and started feeling like a stranger trapped in someone else's story. She kissed him. He kissed her back. And I drove home in absolute silence. Friday couldn't come fast enough. I sat across the street in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel like I was trying to anchor myself to reality. The air was stale. My throat dry. The sky was overcast, but inside my chest, it felt like the sun was melting down my ribs. 4:21 p.m. She was on time. I watched her walk up to the building in that white blouse I hadn't seen in months. One I thought she'd donated, the one she used to wear when she wanted to make an impression. She had her hair curled, subtle makeup, and the confident stride of someone chasing opportunity. Not someone about to walk into a setup. She buzzed herself into the co-working space. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Then I opened the stream. The feed from the bookshelf camera was steady. Crisp. The room was empty. Glass walls, a round table, 2 chairs, and a folder I had planted in the center. Inside were mock-ups. Fake project specs. just enough to hold her interest for 10 minutes. All I needed was 5. At 4:32, she entered the room. Alone. She sat, adjusted her blouse, glanced at her phone. Then she waited. She didn't text anyone, didn't call, just waited. She looked excited, like she thought her life was about to change. She had no idea. At 4:36, the door opened again. And this is where everything cracked. Because the man who walked into that room wasn't Jonas. It was someone else. Shorter, older, gray temples, loafers, a charcoal blazer that hung too loose on his frame. And the second he spoke, I understood everything and nothing at once. "Hope you didn't wait long," he said. Talia stood, smiled, touched his arm. His arm. Not Jonas's. Not the man from the ball. This was someone new. Someone I didn't know. Someone she clearly knew very well. "I like that you're never late," she said, voice low, familiar. "It makes it easier to pretend we're not doing anything wrong." He chuckled. "Pretending gets easier every time." They sat. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. Who the hell was this guy? They talked for 12 minutes. 12 minutes of whispered banter, inside jokes, future plans, subtle glances. They never kissed. Never touched beyond the occasional brush of fingers on the folder between them. But it didn't matter. Their comfort with each other said everything. And then she said something that made my ears ring. "I told Jonas we should cool things off for a while. I think he's catching on." The man nodded. "He's too reckless anyway. I don't need him. He was a distraction." The man leaned back in his chair, smiled, and said, "And your husband? Still asleep at the wheel?" She smirked. "Always." I ended the stream. My hand hovered over the keyboard for several seconds before I finally slammed the laptop shut. My brain couldn't keep up with my heart. There were too many layers. Too many fractures running in every direction. Jonas wasn't the only one. Hell, maybe he wasn't even the main one. This guy, whoever he was, didn't flinch when she mentioned me. Didn't ask questions. Didn't seem afraid. He acted like a man who'd already won. Like he was the one who convinced her she deserved more than me. Like he'd trained her to lie. I had walked into this story thinking I was chasing a single affair. I wasn't. I was watching an entire system unravel. That night, I said nothing. She came home smiling. Said she had a surprisingly chill consultation. Complained about parking. Asked what I wanted for dinner. I told her I wasn't hungry. She didn't press. She went to the kitchen, opened a bottle of red, and hummed while scrolling her phone. I watched her from the hallway. My wife. The woman I gave my 20s to. The woman I stayed up with through sickness, through anxiety attacks, through failed career changes, and crying fits on the bathroom floor when we couldn't afford rent. The woman who held my hand the first time my father called me a failure. The woman who used to call me her home. That woman was gone. And whoever had replaced her had no idea I was no longer playing defense. I was building something. A moment. An ending. The difference now was, I wasn't aiming for revenge. I was aiming for truth. I started digging deeper. Late that night, when she was asleep, I accessed the microphone's full audio archive. Not just the car rides. The office too. She'd left it in her purse at the studio. 3 folders. One of them was from 2 weeks ago, the same day she told me she was too exhausted to talk and needed a bath. And on that file, at 6:19 p.m., I heard her say something that didn't just break my heart. It humiliated it. "I know he's not perfect," she told the other man. "But he's manageable. He wouldn't leave even if I begged him to. He thinks love means loyalty no matter what." A pause. Then, "That's why I married him." I sat in the dark, hands shaking, stomach hollow, and I finally asked myself the question I had been avoiding since the night of the ball. Was I still trying to save this marriage? Or was I just too afraid to admit that she never wanted it to begin with? I started writing everything down. Not because I was trying to be organized. I'm not. My life has always been scattered, like I've been late to something for decades. But this needed structure. Because I wasn't just trying to catch her anymore. I was trying to understand who the hell I'd been living with for 9 years. So I made a list. It started with names, times, places, folders, lies, all handwritten, in a beat-up college-ruled notebook that still had old passwords scribbled in the back. Every time I remembered something, a phrase, a strange behavior, an innocent moment that suddenly looked different in hindsight, I jotted down. Page by page, the marriage began to rot in front of me. Things I used to think were harmless quirks. The way she always took the long route home, or how she suddenly started paying for things in cash, or how she once called me Jack mid-conversation and laughed it off. Now it looked like pieces of a map I never learned to read. And buried in the middle of page 14, I saw something I'd written without thinking, a throwaway note I almost didn't notice. Saw her texting someone named Brinley in February. She said it was a stylist. Brinley, not a name you hear often, not common, and not, as I now knew, a stylist. Because a quick search through the studio laptop, yes, I still had access, showed me a contact saved under B_designs. I clicked it. Email thread, dozens of messages, and every single one had nothing to do with fashion. The emails were coded, half lies tucked in design talk, veiled references to meetings and sketch approvals, with subject lines like color revisions and alternate concepts. But none of the attached files had anything to do with color or design. One of the PDFs was a real estate layout. Another was a lease agreement. A third was a receipt, signed by Talia, for a $6,500 down payment on a beachfront apartment in Galveston, in her name, with Brinley listed as the co-tenant. My mouth went dry. They weren't just messing around. This wasn't some fantasy or secret weekend getaway. They were building a life. Together. Without me. I stared at that screen for a long, long time. Then I clicked print all. My printer screamed to life like it was protesting. I didn't care. I watched the pages come out, stacking one on top of the other, like a eulogy no one had the courage to write. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about erasure. She wasn't just cheating. She wasn't even lying anymore. She was making moves, decisions, financial commitments, emotional investments, all while crawling into bed next to me at night, pretending her backache came from too many hours at a desk. It wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was the replacement. That night, she made us pasta. Her favorite, not mine. We sat across from each other like we had for years. Except now I could hear her voice through two filters, what she said out loud, and what I knew lived underneath. So, she said, chewing, you've been really quiet lately. Are you okay? I nodded once. Tired. You should take a day off. I wanted to laugh. Take a day off? I hadn't clocked into this marriage in months, not because I didn't try, but because I was no longer invited. I'll think about it, I replied deadpan. She smiled, as if that fixed it, then went back to her plate like nothing had happened. I wanted to flip the table, to scream, to throw the folder of emails in her face and ask if Brinley liked his pasta the same way. But I didn't, because I wasn't there to argue anymore. I was watching the credits roll. Over the next 3 days, I gathered everything. Photos, audio, emails, bank records, even screen recordings of her private calendar, where meetings aligned perfectly with GPS tracker pings. And the entire time, she acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed me goodbye in the morning, brought home almond croissants on Thursday, asked if I wanted to see her cousin's baby shower photos. I said yes. She scrolled through them like a tour guide walking me through a place I'd never live again. And on Saturday morning, she left for a networking brunch. Her location pinged a rental condo 40 minutes away. I didn't follow. I just waited. Because by then, I had already set it all in motion. At 3:03 p.m., the courier arrived. I had paid extra for direct handoff. No mailbox, no signatures skipped. I watched through the living room window as the envelope left his hand and entered hers. She looked confused. Probably assumed it was a client packet. She didn't open it right away. I didn't expect her to. But eventually, she would. And when she did, she would find everything. Every receipt. Every photo. Every message. Labeled. Chronological. Categorized like a crime scene. On top of the stack was a letter. Typed. Not signed. 3 lines long. You said I'd never leave. You were almost right. But then I found Brinley. I don't know what her face looked like when she read it. I wasn't there. I didn't want to be. I was already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But in every other way that counts. And that night, when she called, I didn't answer. She tried twice. Then texted. We need to talk. Please. What is this? I didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to explain. And nothing she could say that would make her lies sound like anything but noise. She came home to silence. No suitcase in the hallway. No shoes near the door. No, I made dinner, waiting on the counter. Just silence. I had been gone for less than 6 hours, but the house already felt like it had begun shedding her energy. The emptiness wasn't loud, it was peaceful. like a breath you didn't know you'd been holding finally slipping out. I left the key on the dresser, and I left the envelope open on the table, just in case she still wanted to pretend she didn't know. She called again that night, 3 times, left 2 voicemails, one angry, one tearful. I didn't listen to either of them. I didn't need to. I already knew the script. First, they deny, then they twist it, then they beg. I wasn't interested in any of it. I was already writing a different ending. I moved into a small, quiet apartment above a used bookstore on 4th and Denham. The kind of place with warped windows and drafty mornings, but it was mine. The first space in nearly a decade that didn't echo with her perfume or her curated playlists. I slept on an air mattress for the first 2 weeks, but it was the best sleep I'd had in years. Funny how the absence of lies can feel softer than any mattress. I kept to myself, took time off work, started walking again, long, pointless walks with no destination. I listened to music I hadn't heard since college. I cooked horribly and proudly. Burned eggs. Oversalted pasta. Still better than eating next to someone pretending I wasn't dying inside. One afternoon, I sat on a park bench watching the sunset bleed across the skyline. That's when I saw her. Not Talia. Her. She was sitting 2 benches down, legs crossed, reading a book, real pages, no Kindle. She had freckles. Real ones. Hair in a messy bun, one sneaker untied. She looked up briefly when a dog ran past, smiled like she'd trained herself to look present, but not too inviting. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was the calm, or the way she looked like she wasn't pretending to be anyone. I stood, walked over, nodded at the book. Good one. She looked at me, then at the title, then smiled. It's sad, she said, but honest. Sounds perfect, I said. We talked for maybe 8 minutes. Then I let her finish her chapter. I didn't get her number. Didn't ask her name. I just walked home, smiling. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers came through. No argument. No delay. No emotional plea. Just a text that said, I signed. Hope you're happy. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because I was. Not the over-the-moon kind of happy. Not the Hollywood montage kind. Just steady. Peaceful. Mine. Some nights, I still wonder what she tells people. Maybe I was the boring husband. Maybe she paints herself as the trapped woman who needed to feel alive again. Maybe Brinley was her soulmate. Maybe Jonas was just a symptom. Maybe none of it mattered. Because what I got out of it was worth more than anything she took. I got myself back. Not the version she married. Not the edited, approval-hungry man I shrunk into over the years. The real me. The version who knows silence isn't emptiness. It's clarity. The version who knows that loyalty doesn't mean sacrificing your own dignity. The version who knows that sometimes letting go of someone else is the only way to hold on to yourself.